Oh, you've seen fawning interviews of Justin Trudeau. I mean, this one by Tom Clark asking him what shampoo he uses has got to be the tops.
The one that the entire country wants to know. What shampoo do you use?
What a disappointing answer this is going to be. Whatever happens to be hanging around at the time. If I'm in a hotel, it's whatever they give me. If it's whatever my wife tends to be using right now, I do great for, I don't know, whatever it is, color-treated hair or something or other. It's, you know, I just grab whatever's there.
But if you want anything more slobbering, check out this video done by vice.com, a website that met with President Obama and polished his shoes for a bit. Thought they'd come up to Canada and do the same for Justin Trudeau. It was a love-in. I had difficulty watching it. I just kept thinking, get a room, you two. But I want to show you a few parts of that interview that I found interesting. The first was Justin Trudeau talking about global warming. So we've got economic issues, we've got terrorism, we have the world ablaze, but global warming is his top issue. Okay, now get this though, it's the fact upon which he bases the whole thing. He says that Canada has done nothing on climate change, and of course Vice agrees, but is it true? Here, take a look at their conversation for a moment.
Number one for our demographic, the environment.
First of all, we need a government in Canada that actually recognizes that climate change is real and a real threat. Because for all that this government tries to pretend it cares about it, it's not actually acting on it. What that means is we need a price on carbon.
It's actually rolled back Kyoto Protocol.
Totally rolled back.
So has Canada indeed slid backwards on global warming? Well, first, let's put aside the issue of whether or not global warming is happening and whether people contribute to it. But look at this graph, the actual science. Before Stephen Harper became Prime Minister, Canada's greenhouse gas emissions increased. They went up under the Liberal government. Since Stephen Harper took office, global warming, greenhouse gases have stabilized or in fact declined slightly. Now, I don't credit Stephen Harper for this. This is just our changing economy, using more natural gas. But it's amazing that Canada, with population growth and economic growth, has actually had a decline in the absolute amount of greenhouse gases. But of course, neither Vice nor Justin Trudeau knew that, and they bathed in their ignorance together. Here, check out the next clip of what they talked about. They talked about oil. Look at how Vice.com, but oil, check this out.
Well, we have a government that figured out or that chose to play up fear's division, got elected on promises of accountability and transparency that it then completely threw out the window as soon as it did. But
oil.
Oil.
Yeah, but oil. What about all that oil? We got to stop using oil, says the Vice guy who just flew in on jet fuel. And Justin Trudeau dove right in, and he said that Stephen Harper was quashing protests and that he wasn't submitting to community licensing for oil projects. I don't know what community licensing means. I know we have something called the National Energy Board, which has had extremely extensive hearings on all pipelines. For example, the Northern Gateway Pipeline, more than 4,000 people registered to testify. They had thousands of pages of documents. They reviewed the matter for literally years, and when they finally approved it, they did so with more than 100 conditions. I don't know what community licensing means. I think Justin Trudeau sort of invented it, and I don't think Vice was going to call him on it. But in fact, we do license and regulate our oil and gas industry more than any other country in the world. Certainly our pipelines more than any other country in the world. Does Vice or does Justin Trudeau prefer the regulatory system in OPEC, perhaps? That quashing of protests was particularly hilarious. It's the reverse, actually. Police don't even arrest rioters who are anti-oil and gas anymore. They positively protect Greenpeace protesters when they break the law. But again, I would ask Trudeau and Vice, if you don't want your ethical oil from Canada, fine, but tell us, big guys, what you prefer instead. Now, the next topic these two birds of a feather talked about was the anti-terrorism bill. Massively popular bill in Canada, especially in Trudeau's home province of Quebec. Well, according to the boss of Vice, get this. Well, I'll just let you hear it yourself.
I was growing up here in Ottawa, Canada. I was in a group called Youth Action for Peace. And when Reagan came, we protested, and I also worked for Greenpeace Canada. Lots of protesting. So if I'm opposed to Keystone or oil sands, what have you, I can go out and protest. However, there's new legislation that's being fast-tracked right now. If I'm protesting, I can be spied on, I can be arrested. It seems sane. You know, we want to keep our people safe. However, when you can read their emails, when you can tap their phones without warrant, when you can incarcerate them.
No, actually, Mr. Smith, not in Canada. You can't tap someone's phone without a warrant. I think you're watching a little bit too much science fiction or dystopian future. In fact, in Canada, you need a court order. You need a search warrant to tap someone's phone, and Bill C-51 requires even more applications to judges to get interferences with terrorism. But what I particularly found delightful about this part of the interview is how the Vice boss hates C-51, hates anti-terrorism laws, exaggerates how bad they are, but that just goes to my point. But Trudeau, as you know, supports the bill. So watch this. So you've got the Vice guy several times saying how much he hates the law, how bad it is. He exaggerates that. But when Trudeau says he's going to vote for it, Vice goes all puppy dog, just like the rest of the press. Take a look at this.
Our best challenge is saying, well, how do we not make this about partisan politics? How do we show Canadians that there is a responsible balance, there is a responsible party out there? And we'll say, yes, there are measures that are going to keep Canadians safer in this piece of legislation, so we're going to support it. But it's not the type of legislation we would have brought forward. We're going to be proposing amendments, and a few months from now, we will offer it in our election platform, and we will fix it if we get elected.
Yeah, that's Vice with their hard-hitting interview. I mean, why don't you give the guy a massage? I mean, you know you want to do it. Now, after all this heavy-duty, boring talk for Justin Trudeau, where he's trying really hard not to say something dumb, Vice goes to the good stuff, or as he says it, let's talk about the fun stuff. Take a look.
So let's talk about the next election platform and the fun stuff. Let's get to the fun stuff. Pot.
Yeah.
Go.
If we control and regulate it the way one controls and regulates alcohol, for example, it actually becomes more difficult for underage people to get it.
Sure.
And most importantly, it keeps the millions upon millions of dollars that right now is being funneled into criminal organizations and gangs, back into public coffers, where we get to invest in treatment, in research, in understanding exactly how best to manage this particular product.
If pot is the most popular thing or out of the developed nations and you taxed it, you wouldn't have to have sales tax. I mean, it would be...
So there you have it. Justin Trudeau wants to sell marijuana in corner stores. He's doubling down on that. You know, I think he thinks it makes him look hip and that the youngsters are just going to totally love it. I don't think Justin Trudeau knows how much pot sold in corner stores terrifies every mom and dad in this country who does not want their kid to get into more substances like that. But hey, Justin Trudeau's cool and Vice is cool, and that's fun stuff. Now, one last thing. I mean, it goes to the question, how do you think Canada is doing? Do you think we're on the right track, or do you think we're on the wrong track? These two know-nothings think we're on the wrong track. Here, take a listen.
Quite frankly, our politics, our approach to so many issues in this world needs to shift.
Well, Canada's going backwards, quite frankly.
We have been for the past 8-9 years,
Yeah.
and that's what we've got to wake up to.
So you heard them. Canada is going backwards. They both think Canada is going backwards. Now, it is true that the entire world had a great recession, as it was called, in 2008. It didn't start in Canada. We didn't cause it. We actually weathered it better than most countries in the world. And let me give you proof of that. Canada has the strongest economy in the G8 nations, the developed nations. Unlike the United States, we've balanced our budget. We don't have a staggering national debt like they do. We have lower taxes than them, which is amazing to me. Our corporate tax rate is much lower. We have lower unemployment. The reason I say that is because in the United States, they have a record number of people who don't even bother looking for jobs anymore. They're not even counted in the U.S. unemployment rate. You have to look at the true unemployment rate there. millions of Americans have just plain old given up. But there's other rankings too, soft rankings, the kind of things that Justin Trudeau and VICE.com normally love to point to. For example, just a couple of days ago, the World Social Development Index was published. I don't know, that means soft things like quality of life and fairness and other progressive values. Well, check it out. Canada was ranked in the top 10, ahead of any other G8 nation. Canada was in the top 10 countries in the world for social development. Or how about this? The Global Reputation Institute. That's what other countries think of other countries. That would go to our foreign affairs and what being a Canadian means around the world. Last year, Canada was voted number one, not voted rather, measured number one by the Reputation Institute for having the world's best reputation. How on earth is that moving backwards? And here's my favorite from the New York Times, the Bible of leftists like Vice, and if Justin Trudeau would read the newspapers, he'd probably read the New York Times. Well, look at this story in the New York Times last year, that Canada now has the most successful, wealthiest middle class in the world. So there you have it, two know-nothings trading their lack of knowledge about Canada. They don't know Canada's environment is better. They don't know that what C-51, the anti-terrorism bill, actually contains. The Vice know-nothing says you can get warrantless phone taps. That is just not true, but Justin Trudeau wouldn't know enough to challenge them. They both love the idea of selling pot in corner stores. That's the fun stuff, says Vice, and Trudeau nods along. And finally, they both believe that Canada is going backwards. Canada isn't a very good place. They hate the fact that we're a great place. For TheRebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.